It
Right,
is.
very good. Well, I'm excited to have you again,
Thank
Darren.
you.
Yay! All the way from the UK. Yeah.
I,
You in the US right
sorry, am I in the US? No, I was just in Boston last week. I'm now back in the UK.
now? I saw that. I saw that. How did it go? Were you teaching there?
Really, I loved it. Yes, I was teaching and demonstrating. Absolutely loved it. Liam Galvin and Cheryl Rodman Wagner, they did an amazing job at organising. And yeah, great time, great students. Thoroughly enjoyed it. A bit of drama throughout the week, but all good, all good.
I love it. So
Yeah.
I know that you're coming out to Maryland, but perhaps
Mhm.
we can arrange maybe next year or something for you to come out to Chicago.
Okay, cool,
I would
wonderful.
love that.
Thank you.
So, you know, I'm excited that we're having this chat. Really, really, we can talk about whatever spirit guides us to talk about. I think that a lot of people are intrigued by our last video of you and you coming on this online platform.
Yeah.
How I know Darren is my colleague and good friend Luann saw you and fell in love with you. She's like, Lillian, you have to listen to him and how he reads. Her and I, we talk about everything, you know. We talk about our development and we talk about how we just want to be the very best that we can be as mediums for the voice of those coming in. We don't want to bully them, Darren. We don't want to get too tied up in technique. We don't want to get in our brain. We just want to bring through their soul, their personality, their mentality. And I think that when we're developing, first off, if we're learning from so many teachers, we confuse ourselves in a way. And it's not that a teacher will say to someone, hey, stay with me just because I want you to stay with me. First, take what you learned, take what resonates, give yourself a chance to blend it into what you're doing. Let's start from there, Darren. If somebody wants to find the teacher, what is your advice with that? I know you and I, we're kind of self-taught. We just kind of went with what we felt and we were lifted by the spirit and the intrigue of knowing what we were feeling, hearing, and seeing. I think some people think if they don't have a teacher that they're not good enough or that they have to take classes, which is, a class is good, but is it really something that'll make you better?
I think that the best advice I can offer as far as being taught is, I think one of the best teachers we will ever have in our life is our intuition. And literally, when we are in the presence of our intuition, we are intuition. We're learning something through that sense. And I think in the presence of information, when we hear teachers talk to us and we read a book and we're in the presence of new information, that part of us, that really wise, divine part of us recognizes truth. And I think it speaks to us. And I think when you're in the presence of information, if it feels right for you, then it's right for where you are right now. It's appropriate. Invest in that. But if there's a part of your intuition that is saying, you know what, I just can't get this. This doesn't feel right. That doesn't fit. Then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It just means it's not appropriate for where you're at in your level of understanding at this time. And I certainly know from my own experience of life is that there was things that I was presented with as a young medium that I just didn't get. It just made no sense to me. It just did not come through. So I kind of had to, and I for a while I tried to kind of force myself to conform and to go along with it, but it never quite sat right. And I think I realized over a period of time that the wisest teacher you will ever have, doesn't really matter whether your earthy teacher has been on TV, written books, done whatever, in the presence of any information that's being presented to you, listen to what people say by all means, but value the voice within you the most. And I think when that speaks, you are literally intuition. That's really what intuition is. You're learning something from a higher perspective, regardless of who presents the information. And I think if we can learn to listen to that and not get caught up in being taught by a certain person, or this person does something, or has been on TV, or is in somebody else's perception a great medium, that's very nice and very valid. But the wisest part of you will always be able to navigate through the minefield that gets presented, because there is a lot of information out there and a lot of it's very conflicting. So, listen to that part of you. That's the best advice I could ever give.
Yeah, that was perfectly said. And then staying on the topic, but expanding in another direction, it's not, I think, that one teacher is right, one teacher is wrong. You said it perfectly. Take what resonates with you, what resonates with your soul. How do you want to evolve and align with your purpose. You know, follow what you feel, use what you feel, not just your head, you know, not our human thinking. Sometimes we have this, we do have to use it, but
yeah, absolutely. But it's learning to recognize it. That's learning to recognize that which voice is which, because I think that the mind is always going to want to get involved. That's really what the mind does. You know, the ego, when we're fully identified with the ego, we're talking about our perception, our understanding, our thinking. But because that wise part of us is not from the mind, you know, that wise part of us is our soul speaking. And so we need to learn to recognize the difference between those two elements, and what's speaking and what's behind that. And often we don't always learn to recognize that or distinguish that voice until an experience happens. You know, how many times do we ignore our instinct and then wish we'd listened? How many times do we follow what our thoughts tell us and wish we'd have listened to the other part of us that was saying don't do that? So we only often know these things, which voice is which, when we have the experience that confirms it. It's learning to recognize which part of us is speaking before we have that experience. And I think that's a really powerful tool to help us understand what part of us is coming from a place of love, because that's really what the spirit world is. It's a place of love, and it's a space where they give us a chance to elevate ourselves and other people through that awareness. And I think if anything that we're giving, speaking, receiving in the name of the spirit world comes out in any other way other than it being loving and elevating, then there's something going on within the mind of the medium.
I was going to ask, you must be psychic. You must be psychic. I'm just saying.
Occasionally.
That was the next question. I don't know something happened. I don't know if I ever heard it on YouTube, you know, whatever. A medium said, oh, I was watching Doris Stokes. I was at the center, and I like to listen to other mediums and support them. And I was like, oh my God, you know, I've never heard her. Let me listen. And someone asked the question, can spirit be mad on the other side of life?
Okay.
How would you answer that?
Absolutely.
Spirit, I would love for you to expand on this. This is a wonderful question for Darren, because for me, in the beginning of my mediumship, I felt that once they got to the other side, it was all hunky-dory and it was all loving.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
And then I started to understand imprints more, and I started to understand memories and how they bring emotional expressions. But I don't think, I wish I would have paid attention to that a little bit sooner for me to understand how to explain this better. So I'm curious to hear how you're going to understand.
I think that when we move to the other world, we obviously retain our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences. And as mediums, that's really what we're tapping into when we're giving evidence, because we've got to validate what, you know, the presence of these loved ones. And that the evidence is all we have. So I think that, you know, for the spirit people to come forward and bring information to state that they're all love and light and wonderful, that isn't always evidential for some people. I mean, some people just live pissed off, you know, and that's the reality for some people.
That was their personality.
Exactly, and that's part of their identity. So if they came back in any other way, first of all, it wouldn't be evidential. And whilst I think that we always have the potential to evolve and expand and grow and move beyond the demands of the ego and the demands of the life that we had and the memory of those things, I think that for a little while, we still are very much identified with who we are. So when I go to the other world, I'm going to be Darren. I'm still going to be Darren that I remember and other people remember. Until that point of recognition comes within me, that I recognize that I'm more than just Darren. The higher part of me, the wiser part of me, is not Darren. That's just the coat or the shell that I've chosen, or that my soul has chosen in this experience. So I think that some people, when they get to the other world, they evolve beyond the person that they were when they were here. And I think for some people, for some souls, they go beyond that point of being able to communicate their evidence for that reason. But I think that there's a point when, from an evidential perspective, a medium has to get evidence. And so the spirit people have to give information that can be validated. Because if they came back in any other way, that wouldn't really deliver the message. So I think that we have the opportunity to evolve like we do in this world. I mean, there are many people.
Free will.
Yeah.
We go here and we have it on the other side.
Yeah, I think we, you know, many people are walking around the world in this world in denial of many things. I think when we go to the other world, for some people, they also live in that space of believing that all that they ever were was that person. They don't look beyond it. So I think that is open to everybody in the other world, but I think not everybody takes that or recognizes that.
That's beautiful. It is so beautiful, because it can be confusing, because if you're if you're really truly tapping into the emotional expression of the personality, of the experiences, of how that person was, then if they were somebody that was less maybe emotional, you might feel they're mad, because they're just, like you said, they're coming in with their character and their personality. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're that way on the other side and haven't evolved. It means that was their experience and how they were in this lifetime, correct?
Yes, and we're also assuming that how the spirit people communicate is how we receive it, because obviously we as the medium are the weakest link in this process. So we've got to be real about that.
That was perfect. I love you.
We do. We messed it up.
People look at us and they're like, "You tell me. You should know." We're like, "Oh, you don't even know how hard it is for us sometimes."
And that's one of the issues in mediumship is always going to be the mind of the medium, because our awareness will always conform to our understanding and our experience. So I think if we have this idea as a medium that all we should ever get is lovely, kind, Mary Poppins people from the spirit world, we're not going to be open to the grumpy people that were pissed off. Our mind will filter those out, or filter out that type of evidence, because it doesn't conform to the medium's understanding. So, part of mediumship development is about looking at you as the vessel. What are you presenting to the process? Because it can't just be about what the spirit world want to give, and be so egotistical to think that what they give we're going to get, when we're a significant part of the process. So one of the very, kind of sold elements of development is personal development. We spend so much time as mediums being taught we should know who our guides are, and knowing what evidence is, and reaching for that evidence, and here's a technique. And yet one of the most important elements I found is, let's look at you at the vessel. What are you presenting to the process? What are you offering the spirit world? And I think if that can be harnessed, and we can look at that part of you, it would make more of the spirit world available to us, because we'd understand what parts of this are we open to, what parts are we filtering out. And I think a big part of why we don't get certain bits of information is because we interfere, consciously or otherwise. And that, for me as a tutor, is the most important element, because then our experience of the spirit world will be a reflection of our openness. So we've got to put the spotlight on the vessel. And I think if we can do that in a way that is, not going to push us into crisis or push us into therapy, but to look at what are we offering rather than focusing on what we're getting, then I think our mediumship will just naturally evolve and expand.
Would you say that sometimes we limit ourselves without knowing if we have unresolved emotions ourselves?
Absolutely. Yeah, without question.
Darren, I have to tell you, that's something me and Luann really focus on. As a matter of fact, we're in the middle of restructuring it, adding 2 more weeks to our course, because we found that exactly what you're saying is correct. If we don't, and I don't know, I don't know all there is to know. I can only speak from my experience, Darren. And I know that for me, I feel that I had to do a lot of inner work, and I had to get through emotions that I start to realize that when, let's say, for example, I was abandoned when I was young. So when I would receive that emotion, that emotional expression, it would kind of jolt me, and I would not expand. Now, along the way, I understand it and I move with it, but it would paralyze me, and I feel like I didn't even want to, expand or feel that, because it was triggering me.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that the mind does is very, very wonderful, thank God for it, is that it protects us. It protects us from those parts of us that are really difficult to handle. And so as mediums, we're taking us in. Remember, our mediumship is always going to be a reflection of us. So we have, I call them filters. I don't call them blocks or barriers. I call them filters. And we all have 4 filters within us as a medium that will influence not only the type of personality or people we attract from the spirit world, but also the type of evidence we're open to or closed to. So one of the filters is an unresolved issue with the medium. So if we have got stuff in our life, for example, as mediums, we're not immune to the grief of death. We feel the loss of loved ones like everybody does. But if we have, for example, within us as an unresolved issue, the fact that our father died quickly and never got to say goodbye, and he died of a heart attack, because being in touch with that from the other world, a father that died quickly or somebody that died with a heart attack, if we receive that information in our awareness and that issue within us is unresolved, it may mean that we block out anything that is a reminder of that pain that we felt. So we might block out the heart element to the evidence. We might block out the fact that somebody died quickly, the lack of goodbye, or we may just unconsciously block out all dads that died in that way, or all people that died in that way. So the reflection of our mediumship is directly linked to who we are. And it's only when we start looking at those issues, and it doesn't always require, years and years of therapy, although that's always, I'm a big advocate for that. I think that's really helpful. Mm-hmm. But I think that if we sometimes can just put the spotlight on, the recognition of that part of me is operating, and, look at your mediumship as well. What are you constantly getting? What are you not getting?
I was about to say it, and that's kind of blends right with when the medium is getting the same type of
absolutely
spirits. And
that might be one reason. I mean, there's lots of other reasons. It might be that you've handled the communication really well and that the spirit world have noticed that. And so word goes out, go to her, she'll get you, So I think that may be another reason. So, we've got an unresolved issue with the medium. That's one filter. Another filter is a prejudice. We like to think we're all loving, kind, accepting, benevolent, and open to all. But some of us do hold, some of us hold, consciously or otherwise, racist thoughts, homophobic thoughts, ageist thoughts. If that is a prejudice that's operating within you, you're unconsciously creating within the spirit world a filter that as they step into your awareness, they strip out elements of their self because of you, not because they're not able to bring that, but because of what you're bringing to the process. One of the other things is, and I know that you don't experience this and neither do I, we're far too evolved, is that belief that we're inadequate. We've all got not good enough stuff. That belief that I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, why would they choose me? I'm not going to get a name, I'm not clever enough for that. They're never going to give that to me. All that stuff we put out there, as a thought, as a word, we're moving in, we're creating within our own energetic space that as another filter that the spirit people have to walk through. And so when we say things like, oh, I never hear the spirit world, you're creating the experience of never hearing the spirit world. Mm-hmm. I've heard mediums say, if I saw the spirit people, I'd die. Well, you won't see them then. Mm-hmm. We create that experience. And the last filter, which is really important, and it takes us, again, a lifetime really, it's kind of constantly evolving, is what do you really believe as a medium? What do you believe about the spirit world? What do you believe about the process? What do you believe about your process? Because I've seen mediums stand on platform and say, if you go to the spirit world and you died naturally, you get to the spirit world absolutely fine. But if you died through accident, through suicide and through murder, that's not available to you. And I've seen mediums give demonstrations, and all that they've been available to the spirit world is grandmas that died in their bed. So their beliefs, their perceptions create, again, a framework that the spirit communicator has to step through. So the personal development side of things gives us the chance to look at these filters. And so that as we recognize things and work at things, we kind of open more of ourselves up, but we also might make the spirit world more available to us in who can come through and what they can bring.
100%. And I think the more that we work on understanding to just be that instrument, the more it will flow. Now, would you say then that the spirit world, so you said filters and you talked about filters, but a lot of times we talk about how the spirit world doesn't see our physical body and they see our spiritual body, they see our colors. What is your view on that?
I think both apply. Both apply. Because I think, if my grandfather, my grandmother, my cousin, whoever's in the other world, part of our job as mediums is to give evidence that that loved one is okay. But there's also another element which I think is really quite powerful in helping us to know that they're with us. And it's what I would call earthy evidence, which is where the loved one will give evidence of who they are, but then they'll say things like, you know, she knows that you just remodeled your kitchen, or she knows you've just done your hair, or she knows you just dropped those pins on the floor, or whatever it is. And I think that earthy evidence lets us know as a recipient that our loved ones are present, that they're not on a cloud out the way, unavailable to us unless we go through a medium, that they are around, they're present, and they're looking at us and watching us and sharing in our world as they would if they were here. So I think that although there is this school of thought that they only recognize us as energy, I think that they also have access to maybe seeing through our eyes and noticing what we notice, because that gives them the chance to say to us, you know, I'm with you.
Seeing through our eyes, that's perfect. I love it. I really do. So another reason why, the main reason why I wanted you to get on here and for us to chit chat and talk, besides I really vibe with you. I really do. Like, I just feel like you're comfortable with who you are. You're comfortable with the love you have for mediumship. And that's me. I eat, live, and breathe this. Without this, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't feel like I'm living. It just recharges me, and I'm in love with the spirit world. And the more that I do this, I'm in love with people here on earth. And I know that there is such a love that continues, and I want to be part of that love. Like, you want to be part of that love, you know. And as teachers, we want our students to be part of that love in such a very unique way. But you're going to be online, and I'm excited that you've agreed to do a workshop online.
Yeah, sure.
And the first topic that we have here is identifying the power and levels of the medium's awareness, including experiential mediumship.
Experiential mediumship.
Experiential.
Yeah.
That was my Spanglish.
Your Spanglish is better than my English, I think.
Hey.
Yeah. So no, experiential mediumship it's a really interesting one, because I think every one of us can identify with that thought we have sometimes is, you know, we'd be sat there all looking cute and spiritual and waiting for the spirit world to join us. And then suddenly we'll start remembering something from our own life. We'll remember the kids, you know, demands at school. We'll remember our grandmother's name. We'll remember when we fell off a horse when we were a child. And, you know, we just sat there looking cute and spiritual, and yet all this craziness is going on within us. And what we generally do at that point is we think, you know, my mind's in the way. I need to move my mind out. We do all these very crazy external things to help us feel that we're moving our mind away. And we'll do things like hold a crystal, and we'll say another prayer, and we do all these kind of very mechanical, earthy things, because we have this belief that by doing that, we're going to somehow aid the process. And you know, that's absolutely fine if it does that. That's great. I'm not being negative about it.
Right.
But in that process of connection, what I think is really happening is that as a medium, we're communicating to the spirit world who we are in our very presence. Everything we've ever gone through, everything we have thought and felt and experienced as people sits within our auric field as a memory, as an imprint. And I think what happens to the spirit people is exactly what happens in this world. We look to find connection with people. We look to find similarity. And as a way of the spirit people trying to hold on to a connection to us, they look at what you've gone through, and they pull up into your conscious mind experiences that you've had that resemble their own. And so what happens as a process is they're building a form of emotional connection with you, but using your experiences of the medium. So you probably would have seen a medium, and I've been this medium, and I still am sometimes, when you are standing on platform, and as a really good example of it is when you talk about a grandmother that likes to bake. You talk about a lady that likes to bake cakes. She's usually got an apron on. She's got nice curly hair. She's very kind. She's very generous. She's a grandmother that is in Finland when I work there. She's in America. She's in various places. She's everywhere. She's a very popular granny. And the reason that she's there is that grandma is in the spirit world, without question. But what she's doing is that in the blending with the medium, she's looking for recognition. She's looking for things that you've experienced as a medium that resemble her own experience. And she's bringing those memories up within the medium. So we'll be sitting there looking cute, but remembering our own grandmother. Now, if we start to recognize that that's the process that's going on, and we start to invest in that, we then start to move in our mediumship to receiving information that's not about our experience of our own grandma, but it's about the experience of this grandma as a separate spiritual being. Now, the downside to experiential mediumship is that when we start talking about grandmothers that like to bake, so many people have experienced that. Because with experiential mediumship, it's very much linked to generation. It's very much linked to age. It's very much linked to culture, ethnicity. So it's really the stuff that we're open to sometimes as mediums is the stuff that we're familiar with. You know, names, places, dates, things that we've gone through. The downside to it is that because it's such a common type of information and it's many people have experienced it, it lacks the power to be therapeutic, because people will receive the grandma with an apron that's got a cake and say, yes, my grandma did that, but how do I know that it's your grandma and not my grandma? Sure. It's only when we move into the evidential mediumship we get to separate the two. Now, what we should be seeing in this generation, which we now have, because my grandma did bake a cake, but you know, I also have older people in my life that play poker online, that, you know, they're playing with their iPads and they're on Match.com. So what we should be seeing, what we should be seeing as mediums now is, instead of the grandma coming through baking cakes, is the grandma that's on her iPad, that's jumping out of a plane when she's 90. Because as we evolve, so do the experiences that we have. And therefore, then so does the experiential element to our mediumship. So yeah, it's a fascinating element.
Beautiful. I got it. I get it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I love it. I love how you broke that down. Amazing. Because that could be a place where a student gets stuck.
The spirit people said it was the most important element to the connection process, because it's at that point we as mediums believe we're getting it wrong. And we dismiss the thoughts, our memories. Now, one of the things that I do in a workshop setting is an experience which focuses just on this particular element, and we'll hopefully, when we do that, is to look at how we can look at how the spirit communicator can bring up our memories because they resemble their own. And it's such a powerful exercise for people to recognize that, you know, we try to get rid of our mind, and we do. When we move into the mediumistic state, our mind sits on the shelf. But the experiences that we've had are sat within the auric field, and the communicator brings those up into our awareness because there's a similarity. If we at that point dismiss them as ours, we don't ever move beyond us in our mediumship, and we never get to know the reality of that person's life. We dismiss it, and we don't ever move into mediumship really properly. But when we recognize it, we have a chance to move beyond our experience, and it becomes then about them.
That's beautiful. It's a very common place where students get stuck. Now,
Okay.
I was stuck too. You know, I was like, hey, I'm thinking about my dog right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But when you recognize that, and it's just the recognition. I mean, with all these things, I think you just put the spotlight on it. When you recognize it, it's very freeing. It's very liberating. And I think when students get that, is that the spirit world will use what they have available, and part of that is us. I think the spirit world are like bargain shoppers. If they can get the most out of you for the least input, they're going to do that. And I think part of that process is, you know, it's much easier for the spirit world to bring up a memory from within the vessel, within the medium, than it is to give you an experience that you've never had, never heard of, never touched upon. It takes less energy to do that from within than from an external place. And I think that when we can move beyond the medium's experience, we have the availability of so much of the spirit world to us, where we get to receive information from different languages, different ethnicities, different cultures, because they're beyond our experience. But that connection process at the beginning is vital to get the other world to hold us, and for us to allow to be held. So yeah, it's a fascinating element.
That's beautiful. I think that's brilliant, because again, and if you're somebody that is logical, a little bit more logical, a little bit more left brain, this is the perfect way to, because again, as a teacher, you have to understand those that are right brain, those that are left brain. How do you come in the middle as a teacher to be able to help everyone and nourish everyone's mediumship? Obviously, we're all evolving in a different way, but a person that, in my opinion, is right brain, they're just ready to go, ready to feel it, right? You know, all right. And one that's more left brain would be like, well, what is the step? But I need, you know, I want to see what direction I'm going. So that's beautiful right there. That would so be something amazing. The next thing that you suggested was recognizing the inner and outer conditions to guarantee good mediumship.
Absolutely, because again, in the story I always tell people is my granddad was a gardener. My grandfather was a gardener. He used to grow beautiful roses. And as a child, it always fascinated me that they always started out looking the same. You know, this tight green, dark green bud, they were the same. But yet when they all grew and evolved, they all burst into different colors and different smells. And so as a child, much to my grandfather's annoyance, I would rip off the bud and then sit very carefully on the lawn, unpeeling it, trying to look at what was inside. And every time it just fell to pieces because it wasn't ready to open. And I was trying to force it to conform to my expectation. And years later, what I've realized is a little bit like the flower, that our mediumship has to have inner and outer elements that are going to support its growth and openness. And the inner elements are our responsibility. They're our job to get right. So the 4 inner elements are the mind, the power, the connection, and the breath. And those 4 elements, if we can harness the mind and move it out to the point that it's not interfering, that's step 1. If we can move into our power, that's going to help us to fuel the connection, hold you and hold the spirit communicator as well. If we're breathing correctly, because that's the other element, is our consciousness is very, very linked to our breath. So if we're breathing from a place of anxiety and fear, we're moving very much into our head and not into our sensitivity. So when we breathe from the wrong place, that will impact our consciousness, therefore our awareness. And also, what type of connection are we making? Is it intuitive? Is it mediumship? And how do we know the difference? So if we can learn to understand what those inner elements are, they're our responsibility. We can't blame anybody outside of us for blocking us, not getting a connection. That's nonsense, because we are responsible for the experience. We tend to assess our level of connectedness from an external source. You know, we look at, you know, we gave some information that was right, so therefore I must have been connected. I don't really subscribe to that, you know. So we need to learn as mediums to recognize those inner elements, and they're our responsibility. Only we can do that for ourselves. Where it can fall down are the external elements, the outer conditions, where we have people, environment, language, and delivery. So the language that we use, the way we deliver it, what we receive in our communication, how we, you know, what environment we're in that's going to be supportive or limiting of that experience. And it's more about the story we tell ourselves about that. Because, you know, the example I often give is that when we walk into a church of any denomination, there's an environment to work in. The energy in that space has a potential to influence us. It's why when we walk into a church, we go quiet. It's why when we walk into a pub, we don't have to be. You know, the energy within that space has an influence on us. And the other thing is people, those divine children of God, cleverly disguised as a grumpy recipient, that's manipulative, that's demanding. Always accept the good stuff first. Yeah, divine children of God. But, you know, and it's the story we tell ourselves. You know, people can sit cross-armed and cross-legged, and it may just be a comfort level. But if the story we tell ourselves is that they're blocking us, if the story we tell ourselves is that they're judging us, we straight away go into our mind. It brings us back into the experience. So one of the things we'll look at in the webinar is how we can stay in that place of connectedness, regardless of what's going on the outside, how we can use our breath to maintain the connection. What is the power? How can we find the power?
That is so not explained properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's something that I think is fundamental. And just to sum it up really in one word, the power is love. That's it. That I can't be any more clear than that. You know, we can give all sorts of lengthy explanations, but it is about love.
It really is. That's why when you first really, really surrender, you cry, or the student feels, I feel like crying. Wow, I never felt this before. You know, they've reached that place of really surrendering and tapping into that power. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm excited. All of these, again, guys, we have the workshop coming, and it's going to be June 13th. The last thing that we talked about was fine-tuning the evidence.
Yes.
Fine-tuning the evidence.
Yes. I wish I could give you a magic tip, because everybody seems to want a tip. You know, it's a little bit like,
you could do it.
Yeah, I could, but I don't want to, because because that would be about then somebody following my way or following a technique. And the problem with any of these techniques and the ritualistic type of learning is we don't move to the intuitive sense, which is what mediumship really is. It's an intuitive art. So if we give somebody a technique to get a name or a technique to find a relationship, you can get some degree of success with that, but it's not really going to come from a place. It involves the operation of the mind, and that will always scupper us. You know, it's always going to disable us to some degree. So, you know, fine-tuning the evidence really is about getting the inner conditions right. Are we connected correctly? Is the breathing correct? Is our intent clear? Because remember that the intent moves us towards the content. You know, so we need to look at what's going on within us.
Oh, you should get a shirt that says that. That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt.
That you can do that. I'll let you. But I think if we can get the inner conditions right and learn to manage the outer conditions, then the evidence becomes fine-tuned. And part of mediumship becoming more clear is doing the work on us, looking at what are we presenting to the process. And I think, you know, many people want a technique because it's the world we live in. They want it quick, they want it now. And if I throw money at it, I'll get it. And you will get some degree of success, but your mediumship will never evolve because it's from a ritualistic place, which is not an expression of your soul's desire, it's an expression of your mind's desire. And that's going to be the challenge. So fine-tuning it is not just a simple process. There's a lot of different things that tap into that, some of which we'll cover in the webinar. So there's a lot of things we could look at. I think it's going to be a very powerful experience.
It is, and I think it's going to be powerful because you've decided to do this with love and come on, you know, online and just offer it to people that perhaps can't, you know, incur the expenses of a hotel, of a flight, of, you know, some people can't and want to learn from good tutors. So I'm excited, and anybody that is interested, it's going to be Saturday, June 13th, and it's going to be from 12 to 5 Central Standard Time. The tuition and all of the information is on my Facebook group called Mediumship Psychic Online Classes. So if you find that group and you click on it, all of the information is there. Or if you go to my page or Darren's page, I've been trying to tag you on it, or you'll see it when you go on your page. You'll have the information for this workshop, and you can register on Eventbrite. The link is uniquemediumship.eventbrite.com. That for me fit you, because when I look at you, you're very unique, and in the way that you just really surrender. It's the way it's like this is who I am. You're not mechanical at all. You're just, you let it flow, and that's very unique. And not for nothing, it's not easy as a male sometimes, because males have ego in a good way. We have good ego. Well,
I think but there's a value. I mean, we all have ego. And there's a value to it. You know? Sure. Absolutely. But I think in mediumship, once we become identified with the I, we cease to be empathic to others, because with ego, we're fully identifying with I want, I desire, I need, my identity. And part of the language element to the external, the outer conditions, is that whenever we use the word I whilst working with our mediumship, we're putting the focus on us. We're not putting the focus on the spirit person. Because as mediums, we generally say things like, I feel, I'm aware of, I sense. Well, if the spirit people are giving you the information, why aren't we acknowledging where it's coming from? Why aren't we saying he's telling, he's saying, he's showing, he's giving, there was, he was, she did? You know, we use language to make it about us. So part of what we need to look at is how we can remove the word I to make our experience of the other world stronger. And the other thing about that is that when we become identified with the I, the only cure for that is empathy, where we fully identify with somebody else, which is really what love is. When we fully identify from a loving place somebody else's experience, we start to experience more of it. And so I think that's something which, again, isn't often spoken about within mediumship.
Yeah. I think when I said that, I wish I saw more male mediums. I really do, because you guys are amazing. We're human beings. We're all human beings. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. But I think you guys have this power that comes with your mediumship that I love.
Okay.
You all have a power.
Yeah, I mean, and funny because I think when I see lots of, I think we all offer something very unique to the experience. And I've seen a great deal of mediums over the years, and some women are incredibly strong and powerful, and some are incredibly weak and not, in my perception of them as a medium. And the same is true for male. But I think that there's definitely a lot of change, I think, in mediumship, in how it's presented and how we're experiencing it. And I think part of the world that we live in now is in a world of downloads and apps, isn't it? You know, it's all downloading and apps.
Not communicating, less communication.
Yeah, as mediums, we're doing the same. We're downloading and applying that experience. And I think how we express that to the world is obviously going to be influenced and filtered by the vessel. Whether you're male or female, the spirit will recognize that in the way that we do. But I think there are qualities in each person that influence our experience of the spirit world, regardless of male and female. But I take your point. I see what you're saying.
I don't know. I wish there was more. I think that I wish there was more mediums. Period. When I teach males, I get excited, and when I teach females, I get excited. It's not a matter of sex. I think it's just. I think I love it. I'm putting it out to the universe that we, all evolve together equally, and we do it for the best and greatest good of the world and love. Like you said, all of this just comes down to love.
It does, and I think any kind of gift that is expressed from the soul. I say gift because really what we do with it is the gift. It's not a gift as such, but I think that anything that we offer the world from a loving place that has the potential to elevate humanity. And mediumship is that, music is that, creativity is that, anything that's given from the heart will elevate, should elevate. So it's a powerful thing in the world to offer.
I love it. I'm excited. Well, I thank you so much. I mean, oh my God, you just blow my mind every time I talk to you. I get excited and I want to go do a reading. I've never seen you read, but I am excited to see you one day, to come out. I know you're going to Maryland. That's my goal, to see you out there. But I'm excited you're coming to the U.S. You have a lot to offer over here. You really do. I think you have a lot to offer anywhere you go. But I am excited that we're doing this online. I really am.
Yeah, me too. And it's the first.
And when I started this, I did not have the opportunity to afford classes. I didn't. I couldn't travel. I couldn't, and I was seeing faces and I was feeling things. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So I learned from books and I trusted and I just went. And that was part of my journey and I appreciate it. But this is wonderful now that we can do this. So thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
And Darren, if somebody wants to work with you, if somebody wants to look at what's going on in your world, what's your website?
Okay, so my website is www.darrenbrittain, and it's DARRENBRITTAIN.co.uk. There's an events page that lists what I'm doing and where I'm going to be, with contact numbers and emails and stuff for you to reach out. That's pretty much the point of contact. I'm on Facebook as well, so you could add me to Facebook.
And do you have a CD and an MP3 of Sitting in the Power?
I do, yeah, and there's information about that on the website as well. I also teach people on a one-to-one basis online or face-to-face for those that are relatively local to me. So that's also available. So everything is through the website.
I'm excited. So let's do this thing, and if all goes well, if you want to do a series, then we'll see where the universe moves us. But we're excited to launch this first one. And we hope to see everyone that it feels guided to come and join. As you can see, he is a pleasure to hear. I can hear you. I can listen to you all day. And you're so giving. You're so giving. And, you don't hold back. Thank you for being you. And once again, thank you for your time. And we will talk soon. And everybody join, again, the workshop online. It's uniquemediumship.eventbrite.com. Again, the link to join in June is uniquemediumship.eventbrite.com. Bye, Darren. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.